a little bit because what I'm doing just for the first few minutes is really I'm going over something that we had mentioned last year. You remember that that last year I saw the. Come sit down here. Run down. Come sit down. I mentioned last year that that the Ran, the beginning of Megilah, brings the Ramban, and they're discussing why exactly was it that the Perozim and the Mukafim observe on different days, and that's actually for the pasuk, because the pasuk says what we're going to Alkein ha-Yehudim ha-Perozim ha-Yoshim barei ha-Perozos, that those that are living in the open cities, Osim es yom haba asar l'chodesh hadar simcha mishta v'yom tov mishlach manos ish l'reyehu. And that pasuk, it doesn't say anything about the Mukafim. The Mukafim are mentioned only later. That the original Purim began with the Perozim, and it seems it began of their own initiative, and then at some time in the future, Mordechai and Esther and Mordechai and his Bezdin added the Mukafim also. So, what reason is there that for the Perozim and the Mukafim doing the observing Purim on different days? And why? That's number one. And number two, why is it that the Perozim actually, on their own initiative, began Purim observance the year after the Nes, and the Mukafim only began Purim observance at some time later, and only after Mordechai and his Bezdin legislated it. Okay, so this is the question that the Ran in the beginning of Megillah brings the Ramban, and then the Ran asks very, very significant questions on the Ramban. Come in. And last year, if you recall, I refreshed my memory because I looked at the recording last year, and and I said that it's clear that the Ramban, the Ran did not have the Chidushei Ramban. The Chidushei Ramban certainly at that time wasn't printed. And if you see that the Chidushei Ramban that we have in all of the yeshivas, the Chidushei Ramban was actually edited, and it was published by Rabbi Issa Zalman Meltzer. Okay, it was a Rabban Kotler's father-in-law. And he has a long Hakdama letter which he writes, and he thanks the donors, the benefactors, which enabled him to make this publication. And you see, he says that that there was no really Chidushei Ramban. There were the Rambans. There was the Shagmul. There was the Torah Sodom. There were many. Were the Tshuva, some of the Tshuvas Ramban, and there were Chidushei Ramban. Moshe, sit there. There were Chidushei Ramban here and there, and that were, but there was no Chidushei Ramban as such. The Chidushei Rashba, which really the Rashba was a Talmud of the Ramban, but his Chidushim were actually published as Chidushim before the Ramban's Chidushim were ever published. Okay, so therefore, I think that it's very, very clear that the Ramban's Chidushim were never seen by the Ran. And therefore, he asked, after bringing the Ramban, which he evidently only heard Baal Peh and excerpts from, evidently, he didn't have access to the entirety of the Chidushei Ramban. He asked questions, which the questions are all resolved when you look into the Chidushei Ramban, in which this issue is dealt with in great length. Okay, and I did it very, very briefly, and this is exactly what the Ramban says is what the Menos Halevi of Shlomo Alkabetz himself says in explanation of this phenomenon that this is a Yom Tov in which the Prozim celebrate one day, the Mukafim celebrate another day. Very difficult to fathom, difficult to understand. And the Ramban explains that at the time of the Nes Purim, the majority, or a very, very large portion of the Jewish people had already returned to Eretz Yisrael at the time of Koresh. Because remember that Koresh allowed, that he authorized the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash. Then under the influence of the surrounding nations, he suspended it. But at the time that he gave the initial permission, the sanction to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash, so the Ramban says that the majority, and it's not clear because the Ramban in one place in this very, very long parish, in one place he says the majority, and in another place he says it wasn't a majority, but it was many, many, many. And so he asks, and this is a question that the Ran asked on the Ramban. We see that the time of Ezra, only 40,000 Jews emigrated from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael. So how could the Ramban say that from the time of Koresh? So he explains this, and he says that from the time of Koresh, when Koresh gave sanction to the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash, a very, very large number of Jews emigrated, okay? And then he suspended it, and the emigration from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael kind of ceased. And then, years later, in Ezra's time, Ezra and Nehemiah's time, only 40,000. So in other words, only 40,000 were added to those that were already there. So in other words, and the Ramban says that the Gezerah of Haman was primarily against the Jews in Eretz Yisrael, of which there were many, and most of them dwelt in walled cities, and therefore they were under less sakona because the walls, they were Jewish cities, because the Ran had asked on the Ramban that a walled city is dangerous because you're confined with your enemies. But he didn't. But again, he didn't see the whole Ramban because the Ran assumed that we were talking about the walled cities in Chutz La'aretz. But the Ramban is very, very clear on this, that he's speaking about that the majority were a vast number of Jews had already returned to Eretz Yisrael. They were there, and and those Jews that lived in walled city were the dinim of Bate Arechama. They were Jewish cities, and they were afforded protection by their walls, and the Jews that were in the greatest sakona were those Jews who lived in the open cities, okay, because they really had really little to protect them, right? And so therefore, in the first year after the Nes of Purim, on their own initiative, the Prozim decided they decided to observe Purim, and the Mukafim, who were during the Milcham and during the campaign, shall we say, of the Persians of Haman and the Amalekim, had been in a lesser sakona. So therefore, until Mordechai and his Bezdin sometime later legislated and introduced Purim as a yontif, the Mukafim did not observe Purim. And when Mordechai and his Bezdin did actually introduce Purim, it was introduced in such a way that the Prozim, who began celebrating their Purim on their own initiative on Yudalid, should maintain Yudalid, and the Mukafim, like Shushan, should keep Tesvav. That's what the Ramban says, and I see that the Manos HaLevi, Rav Shlomo Alkabetz, says it as well, and it's another indication that the Chidush Ramban wasn't printed because the Manos HaLevi quotes extensively from the Ramban. And here he doesn't mention the Ramban. He says exactly what the Ramban says without mentioning the Ramban. Had he been aware of the Ramban, had he seen the Chidush Ramban, had they been available, he would have certainly quoted it. Okay. Now, let's see. I want to learn a little bit the Mishnah and Daf Tes. The Mishnah says that Ben Ir Shaholach Lakrach. That the ear, remember the ear, there's a difference. The first Mishnah, of course, speaks about different dinim for the kvarim that are maktim, but we're not dealing with that this evening. The Ben Ir Shaholach Lakrach, the Ben Ir, whose din is to read the Megillah on the 14th, he traveled to a krach, and in the krach they read the Megillah on the 15th. Ben krach Shaholach Le'ir, or the Ben krach who went to a city. So what is their din regarding Mikra Megillah? What's the din? And the Ben Ir reads on the 14th, and now he travels to the krach, where the din is 15. The Ben krach travels to the ear. So what is the din? So it says, Im osed lachzor lemekomo, korim kimemkomo. The Mishnah is very, very vague. The Mishnah says that Im osed lachzor lemekomo, if he is going to return to his city, the Ben Ir is going to return to his ear, the Ben krach is going to return to his krach, then korim kimemkomo, then he's going to read the Megillah as his din is, on the 14th or 15th, whatever the case might be. V'im lav korei mohem. And if not, he reads the Megillah together with them. That's all the Mishnah says. The Mishnah is very, very unclear. Certainly he's there, right? If the Ben Ir goes to the krach, if he intends to come home, he reads on the 14th. Well, did he come home? Didn't he come home? The Ben krach goes to the ear. So it depends on where he is. So the Mishnah only says if he's going to come home, but the Mishnah is very, very sparse on details. Okay. So the Gemara says right away. The first thing that the Gemara says is it was recognized that this is very, very that there's little information given here in the Mishnah. So Omar Rava. Lo shanu ela sha'osid lachsa b'leila yudalad. He says that this is only if he intends to come home the night of Yudalad. He has time, the entire night of Yudalad, as long as he has returned home by the Alos HaShachar in the morning. And then he'll retain his din. Also very unclear. If, however, he has no intention of returning to his location by the morning, then Kori Mohem, then he will read with the people in whose city he finds himself now. Very unclear, okay? Very unclear. And because of that, Rashi, and we're going to see the Rosh, really struggled to understand what Rava meant. So listen what Rashi says. Remember, there are two components to the Mishnah: the Ben Ir Shaholach Lakrach, the Ben Yudalet who went to the Mokum of Tesvav, and the Ben Krach Shaholach Leir, that's the Ben Tesvav who went to the Mokum of Yudalet. Okay, fine. And Rava says that what does it mean? Im Osid Lachza, he's going, he's not going. What does it mean? Im Osid Lachza means that by the morning he will be home. In other words, because the morning, which is the Alos HaShachar, is the Zman of Mikra Megillah Shel Yom. So if he is going to, his intention is to be home in the morning, back in it, then he will read the Megillah as his community. So Rashi explains that this din of Rava refers to the Ben Krach Sholach Leir. That his man is Tesvav, not Yudal. His man is Tesvav. He goes to a city, right? And now, if he's going to remain in the city over Yudal or over Purim, so then certainly he's going to read the Megillah and Yudalit. But Rashi says, he interprets Rava, explains Rava, that if his intention is, if he's going to be back in his krach, right? If he's going to be back in his krach by the morning, the Alos HaShachar of Yudalit, so it means that since he intends to be back in his in his krach on the morning of Yud Daled, he was never in the ear on Yud Daled that the din of ear should be chal, and therefore it's considered as if he never left his walled city, and his man is tesvav. Okay. Now there are some that say that even if it's only his intention to return, and he didn't actually return, he's still going to read on tesvav. But we're not going to. At the moment, we're going to take the Rashi as it appears that Rava said again that the ben krach goes to the ear, okay, and he's in the ear the night of Purim, the night of Yud Daled, right? He's there the night of Yud Daled, and his intention, or he does, let's say the Rashi says, he leaves the city early enough that he's out of the city by the Alos HaShachar of Yud Daled, so consequently he never lost his din as a ben krach, and he's going to read the Megillah on Tesvav. He never became mechuyev to read the Megillah on Yud Daled, okay? Rashi, what about this? So Rav is actually taking the way that Rashi is saying, because the Mishnah said ben ir sholach lekrach and ben krach sholach leir. So according to the way that Rav is explaining, the way that Rashi is explaining Rava is really addressing only the second din of the Mishnah, that the ben krach went to the ear, and now since he goes to the ear, does he become a member of that community, and therefore he has to read the Megillah on Yud Daled, not Tesvav? It says depends. It depends. If he leaves the community of the ear before the Alos HaShachar of Yud Daled in the morning, then he never lost his din as ben krach, and he's going to read the Megillah on Tesvav.
What does it do at night?
What?
But the night of...
Oh, we'll see. Okay, we're going to address that. Then Rashi goes on and says, but Rava doesn't seem to address at all the other din, the first din of the Mishnah. What about the ben ir sholach lakrach? Okay, so Rashi says the same will apply. What does he mean? What does it mean that the same will apply? If the ben ir goes to the krach, in other words, he should have read the Megillah on Yud Daled, but he goes now to the krach where the din is on Tesvav. So the same concept will govern his chiyuv. Only we advance it a day. That if he intends to leave, if he intends to remain in the krach for the Alos HaShachar of Tesvav, then he becomes a ben krach and he reads the Megillah with them. If he intends to leave the krach before the Alos HaShachar of Tesvav, then he retains, although he was in the city, the walled city, the night of Tesvav, that doesn't change his status, and he's still going to have to read the Megillah on Yud Daled. Here you will have to say, according to Rashi, that it depends on his intention, on what his intention is. Okay. So in other words, Rashi says that the ben krach who goes to the ear, his status is determined by the Alos HaShachar of Yud Daled, and the ben ir shaholach lakrach, that he should not, does he or does he not lose his status of the ben ir, depends on where he's going to be at the time. Thank you. At the Alos HaShachar of Tesvav. Okay. The Rosh disagrees with Rashi, and the Rosh says it is because he says that's not the way that Rava stated his din. Rava didn't say his din that way. The Rava said simply lo shanu ela sha'osid lachza b'leila Yudaled avalein osid lachza b'leila abba osar korimoen. Rava was speaking about the entire Mishnah. According to the way that Rashi is interpreting, Rava was only really addressing only the ben krach sholach leir, the second in the Mishnah. Okay? And saying that if he intended to leave the city before Alos HaShachar of Yud Daled, then he still retains the din of the ben krach. Okay? But, and then Rashi assumes that the din would be the same of the ben ir shaholach lakrach, and only what we say, it's kind of, we call he extrapolates it, and he says that if the Ben Ir Sholach Lakrach intends to leave the Krach before the Alos HaShachar of Tesvav, then his din would be, right, as he was Krach to read on, okay, but the Rosh says that that's not what the Gemara says. The Gemara, when Rava said Lo Shanu, Rava was talking on the entire Mishnah. He was speaking about the Ben Ir and the Ben Krach. According to the way that Rashi is interpreting it, the Rava was only speaking about the Ben Krach Sholach Le'ir, where the determining factor is the Alas HaShachar of Yudalet, and from there you derive what the din of the Ben Ir Sholach Lekrach, that he would be determined by Tesvav. But he says there are Rosh that's not what Rav is saying. So therefore, the Rosh learns the Gemara, learns Rav's memra entirely different. And the Rosh says that what Rava meant to say goes on both the Ben Ir Sholach Lakrach, which is the first din of the Mishnah, and the second din. In other words, that even the Ben Ir Sholach Lakrach, he goes to the Krach, then you would say that he becomes part of that community, and he reads the Megillah on Tesvav, right? That's what we would assume. He reads the Megillah on Tesvav as the Ben Krach. But Rava said that if his intention, let's go here with his intention, if he actually did, if he didn't, but because this in itself is a very the big machloikas with the Machik Mishnah, the Kesef Mishnah. What does it mean? Does it mean that he actually leaves? He actually comes back? Is only a question of his intention. So, if the Ben Ir goes to the Krach, and his din now, if he remains in the Krach, certainly he reads the Megillah on Tesvav. But if he intends to leave the Krach before the Alos HaShachar of Yudalet, the Rosh says, Yudalet, right? Then he does not become part of the Krach. Okay? He doesn't become part of the Krach. Okay? Whereas Rashi says that if the Ben Ir goes to the Krach, okay, it's determined by what he's going to do on the Alos HaShachar of Tesvav. The Rosh says no, that the Ben Krach, the Ben Ir that goes to the Krach, right? And if he intends to be in the Krach the morning of Tesvav, of Yudalet, the morning of the Alos HaShachar, where Rashi would say Tesvav, but the Rosh says that Rava meant the morning of Yudalet, he already loses his status as a Ben Ir, and he's going to maybe have to remain there or read B'Yechidus, but he's going to become a Ben Krach by virtue of his being in the Krach the morning of Yudalet. Okay? That's the way that the Rosh differs from Rashi. So on that, the Gra in Simon Tofresh Tzadik Peiches, and of course in the Kabbalah Sanal here, all of the Mefarshim ask on the Rosh. Hold on a moment. If the Ben Krach comes to the ear, so in other words, you would say that he's really going back in time, because the Ben Krach reads the Megillah on Tesvav, the Ben Ir reads the Megillah on Yudalet. So there I understand that if the Ben Krach is going to be in the ear at the moment of the Alos HaShachar of Yudalet, then he becomes a Ben Ir. He's there and he joins them. He becomes Chayev in the Megillah Shel Yom at the time that they become Chayev, right? So therefore, he loses, he's divested as his status of a Ben Krach, and he becomes a Ben Ir. Okay, fine. Why? Because he was the Ben Krach. Now he's in the ear at the moment of the Alos HaShachar of Yudalet. Now he's a Ben Ir. Fine, he reads today. But if the Ben Ir goes to the Krach, the Zman of the Kriya is only tomorrow, is Tesvav. So now the Ben Ir went to the Krach, and he's going to leave the Krach only in the morning of Yudalet. In other words, at the moment of the Alos HaShachar of Yudalet, he will be in the Krach, right? At the moment of the Alos HaShachar of Yudalid, he will be in the Krach. He loses his status of Ben Ir. So the Gra and the Covenant Solomon say, wait a moment, there's no Megillah in the Krach on Yudalid. Why would his remaining in the Krach on the moment of the Alos HaShachar of Yudalid alter his status as a Ben Ir and make him a Ben Krach? They're not reading the Megillah in the Krach until tomorrow anyway. When the Ben Krach comes to the ear and he remains there, and he's there on the morning of Yudalid, well, then his chiyuv of the Kriyas HaMegillah is simultaneous with those of the Bnei Ha'ir. We understand that. But if the Ben Ir goes to the Krach, if the Ben Ir travels to the Krach, so, and he's in the Krach the moment of the Alos HaShachar of Yudalid, why would that make him a Ben Krach? He's a day early. There's no Megillah today, the morning of Yudalid in the Krach, right? So why is the determining factor there for him, for the Ben Ir Shalach LaKrach? Why is it the morning of Yudalid?
Who says it's when they're lining that makes the chiyuv?
Well, okay, we'll see. But that's Al Kaponim. That's the way that the,
because he's in a place now that he can't hear it, so therefore that means he has to hear it on the 15th.
Okay, all right. But Al Kaponim, that's the but Rov of the Rishonim hold like the Rosh. Rov of the Rishonim hold like the Ramban holds like Rashi, but Rov of the Rishonim hold like the Rosh. Okay, so then the Gemara goes on, and the Gemara wants to know, where does this come from? I mean, why do we say? And let's say the Ben Ir goes to the Krach, or the Ben Krach goes to the Ir. So why he's here on a trip? He's here on business. He's here to visit family. Why does he necessarily, by being in the Krach, either the morning of Yudalad according to the Rosh, or the morning of Tesvav according to Rashi, why does that necessarily? Why is he divested of his home status? Why? He still lives in the ear. He's visiting here, right? It's not the Pnei Yeshua explains why this has nothing to do with the din of nosin and of chumrei amokim sheyotza misham. This is the chumrah. This is a din. Are you a ben Ir or a ben krach? He's a ben Ir. It happens to be that he's traveling. He's visiting the krach. Why does that change anything? Okay. And again, because of time constraints, I don't want to go because there is a parallel to this, to the Ben Chutz Loretz that goes to Eretz Yisrael after Zion Macheshvan, or the Ben Eretz Yisrael that comes here after Zion Macheshvan. Right? Okay. But again, that's too. I'm not clear of those dinim anyway. So, but okay. So the Gemara asks, Omer Rava Menohanim Mileh. How do we know this? That you're telling me that the Ben Krach comes to the ear. And if he intends to, if he's going to be, or he intends to be, or he is in the ear at the moment of the Alos HaShachar of Yudalid, he's already a Ben Ir. Why? He's a Ben Krach. He's visiting. Why? So it says, because it says, Al Kein HaYudim HaProzim HaYoshvim Ba'orei HaProzos. Because that's the Osim Es Yom Arba Osar. Okay. So what it says that Michdi, Ksiv HaYehudim HaProzim, the Megillah was very clear. It says the Yehudim HaProzim, those that are residents of the open cities. Lomeli LeMichtav HaYoshvim Ba'orei HaProzos. Why does the Megillah, the Pasuk, which is the Ruach HaKodesh, the Megilas Esther is the Ruach HaKodesh Nemra, and not only that, the Megilas Esther is Nitnuli Dorish with the Yud Gimel Midrash Atar and the Dreshes Bem, right? So HaKamash Melon, the Pruz Ben Yoma Nikra Pruz. That a Pruz Ben Yoma, that even if he's only a resident of the Pruz for one day, he already has the din of a Pruz, of a Ben Pruz. Okay? Right?
Because he's a Yoshim.
Right. Because it's Al Kain, HaYehudim HaProzim, HaYoshvim, Ba'orei HaProzos. Right? Why does it say, or if it says Yehudim HaProzim, why does it add Yoshvim or HaProzos? To tell you that even if he only resides in the ear for the moment of the Alos HaShachar of Yudalit, he's a Ben Ir. And the way that Rashi learns, if he resides in the Krach, the moment of the Alos HaShachar Tesvov, he's a Ben Krach. And the way that the Rosh learns, both are determined by the Alos HaShachar of Yudalit. Fine, okay. This is a little bit, this is the basic sugya. So, I'm going to, the Turei Even, the Shagasarya, if without this din, without this drosha of Rava, of Alken Hayudim HaProzim HaYoshim Borei HaProzos, we would have assumed that the criterion for the Ben Ir to become a Ben Krach, or the Ben Krach to become a Ben Ir, is a slightly more demanding one. That the fact that the Ben Krach is in the ear at the moment of the Alos HaShachar of Yudalit isn't sufficient to divest him of his din of a Ben Krach. It's not enough. What is, we don't know. But that he's there for. But since it says Alkena Yudim HaProzim HaYoshim HaProzos, the yeshiva, even the very, very temporary yeshiva of sitting there, of remaining there at the moment of Alos HaShachar, is sufficient. Fine. Okay?
It's like exercise.
Yeah, it's exactly it. It's Exeris HaKosav of the Megillah, and whereas again, the other Kisvei Kodesh, even the Nevi'im, are not really, weren't given in such a way that one can derive Gezeres but the Megillah is Nitin L'Darash, and the Gezeres HaKosav, the Megillah, Gezeres Shovin, the Megillah, a Hekesh in the Megillah is for the Yud Gimel Midas. Okay. And that's why Rabbi Yochanan says that the Megillah was given Sinai, and this is also because it means that it was given Lidorish Alpi the Yud Gimel Midas. Okay, but listen to what the Shagasaya, the Turei Even asks. With deriving from Mir Alkein HaYudim HaProzim HaYoshim Borei HaProzos, which tells me this chiddush that he may only be here. He may be here only at the Alos HaShachar of Yudalit. That's enough to convert him from a Ben Krach to a Ben Ir. That moment, that's enough. He becomes a Ben Ir. Okay? And the same with the Ben Ir, that goes to the Ben Krach. Okay. Listen what the Shagasaya asks. Now, probably, when we come to the end of this year, I'm going to probably forget to come back to the Shagasarya and try to a little bit to explain what I feel might be an answer to his question. If I forget, someone don't hesitate. Just remind me the Turei Even. Just tell me the Turei Even. What?
We'll shout.
Okay. Okay. Okay, listen what the Shagasarya asks. It says Alkena Yudim HaProzim HaYoshim Borei HaProzos. So that tells me, as Avigdor said very, 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 very precisely, that it's a Gzeres HaKosav in the Megillah that approves Ben Yom is approves, a Mukav Ben Yom is a Mukav. Fine. Correct the Shagasarya in the Gemara Bava Basra. The Gemara is speaking about that when, under what circumstances, and what time is required to establish residency in a location. So it says, so he brings a baraisa. The baraisa is actually in the end of Sanhedrin. It says that hachamoros v'agemalos ha'ovros mimokum lemokum v'lona b'toichem. You know that the din of the Iran Nidachas, that the Iran Nidachas is where the majority of the community worshipped Avodah Zarah. And of course, it's not, we're simplifying it because, of course, there are very, very numerous requirements. But if they're judged to be Iran Nidachas, then where an individual who is over the Avodah Zarah is Chayev Skila, but the Anshi Iran Nidachas are B'Sayef. And Sayef is a lesser misa, lesser severe severity than skila. Okay, and also the possessions and the belongings of the Anshi Nidachas are osa bahano, voisa tel olam lo yibona. It has to be destroyed. The city has to be destroyed. So now, the Baraisa says, the Gemara Baba Basa brings the Baraisa, what happens if there are travelers, right? There are peddlers. There are people that are camel drivers, donkey drivers, and they're passing through the city. And somehow they're also over the Avodah Zarah with the Anshe Nidachas. So what is their status? Are they part of the Nidachas if they have to be killed besayef, which is actually a din of milchama, which the way the Rambam says is that the entire Klal Yisrael has to join forces against them and prosecute a milchama against them, as opposed to skila, which is an individual misav bezdin. And what is the status? Let's say a caravan comes with 100 camels, and they're in the Ar Nedachas, and they have $1 million worth of merchandise. So does that merchandise become chayrim like all of the belongings of the Anshe Ar Nedachas? And does it have to be burnt? Does it have to be destroyed? So the Baraisa says, "Hachamoros v'hagamalos v'haovros mimokum lemokum." They are traveling from location to location on their business. V'lona betocha, and they happen to be in the Iranidachas. They took a lodging in the Iranidachas. V'hutcha imohem, and they were somehow convinced they worshipped Avodah Zarah with the Anshe Iranidachas. So hein beskila umamonam polat. Okay, they are not considered as part of the Anshe Nidachas, and they're punished as individuals, beskila, not besreifa, and their momon, their merchandise, their belongings are not oser bahano, and there's no v'hoisa tel olam, they're not a tikbatzel toch rechava, it doesn't apply, everything is mutter, fine. Why? Because they're not residents. But ve'im nishtahu sham lamid yom, if, however, they remain there for 30 days, right? Then hem besayef umamonim ovan. After 30 days, they become dwellers, residents of the Arnidachas, and they are punished as the Arnidachas in the Onesh Haguf, which is Sayef, and in Choshen Mishpat, in the terms of their belongings, are forfeit. Okay, fine. Umefarish time, and the Gemara says, what is the reason for this? Mishum dechsiv, right? Mishum de yeshivas mosala mikra pochas melamed yom, because residency cannot be established in less than 30 days. Okay, v'gabe hanir hanidachas yoshvei ha'ir ksiv, right? And the Ir hanidachas says it's called yoshvei ha'ir. It says yoshvei ha'ir, and therefore you're not yoshvei ha'ir unless you've resided in the city for 30 days. Less than 30 days, you're not a toshav, you're not a yoshev. So therefore, you're punished for the avodah zarah that you for the avera, right? But you're punished skila, not sayev, and you're not part of the Ir nidachas. You're not subject to the din of Ir nidachas because you've been there for 30 pochas mishloshim yom. If you're there 30 days, then you're meyoshvei ha'ir, right? Umaiselo, and the Gemara proves it. Midetanya, another braysa. Hamoida hano me ansheir. If a person makes a neder and he says, "I will have no hano from the residences of this city," Kol shenishta sham yud beis chodesh oser lenus mimeno. Now, you may not derive any hano from a resident of the city who's been there for 30 days. In other words, if someone is there less than 30 days, what?
Is it Yud Beis Chodesh?
No. Oh yeah, but I said Yud. Yeah, I'm sorry. Hamodam anshe ir kol shenishta sham Yud Beis Chodesh, right? Whoever was there for Yud Beis Chodesh is also lehenus mimenu. Okay, right. This is the brayso. Good. Thank you. Okay. So that's if he says anshe ha'ir. Anshe ha'ir is Yud Beis Chodesh. You're not anshe ha'ir unless you were there for 12 months. What if, however, his neder is meyoshvei ha'ir, that I am moida hana, I will not have any hana, not from the anshe ha'ir, but from the yoshvei ha'ir, kol shenishtashem lamed yom oser lenus mimeno. Pachas mekan muter lenus mimeno. If there the standard is a different one, and Yoshvei Ha'ir 30 days. So you make the neder that I'm not going to derive any hana from the Yoshvei Ha'ir, then it depends. If the person that you want to have dealings with has been there for 30 days, then he's Yoshvei. He's not Anshei Ha'ir yet until 12 months, but he's Yoshvei Ha'ir because he's been there for 30 days. Okay, fine. V'im kein, so asks the Shagasaya, the Turei Even, im kein hochanam enema hayoshvim ba'arei aprozas. Why did Rav Dashan al kein haYehudim aprozim hayoshvim ba'arei aprozas? That it means that if you're there for one day, if you're there the alos hashachar of Yudaled, you're already considered a Pruz ben Yoma. You're a resident of the city. Linyan mikra Megillah. Why don't we say hochanam enema Be'ir babore aprozas, yes. Kol shenishtar sham lamed yom davke b'mashma, avaloi pruz ben yomo. Okay, he says that why the same thing here. How did Rava know to learn from that Yoshvei aprozas to tell me that even if he's pruz ben yomo, he's mechuyev to read the Megillah as in the community that he's in now. The Ben Krach has to read the Megillah on that. Maybe the Yoshvei aprozas tells me, just as in other places, that he's not a Yoshev Ira Prozas unless he's been there for 30 days. And if he travels from the Krach and he comes to the ear and he's there, they are Los Hashachar of Yudaled. But nevertheless, he reads the Megillah on Tesvav because since he has not yet been in that city for 30 days, he's still not Miyoshvei Ha'ir. He's not Miyoshvei, right? Yoshvei HaProzas. Right.
You know, it's lav dafke that Rav is medayek from the word Yoshev.
Right.
Could be he learns that whole process is extra.
Yeah. So look, I'm saying that evidently there's much to talk about, but that's what he asks of it. I'll talk about him. Okay. In other words, what he's saying is that there are baraisis that interpret the din of Yoshim differently, and they interpret it that there's a fixed standard of 30 days. So why did Rava feel here that doesn't apply? Why should it be? Einochanat could be different. Why should it be different? Okay. So here we have what I mentioned before. You see, here I have the Hatzir of Tzvi Pesach Frank, and he has such a comprehensive. He was in Yerushalayim. He has such a comprehensive section on. There's nothing, certainly regarding the union of prozim and mukafim that he doesn't touch upon, and he's masbir very, very well here the machlokas Rashi and the Rosh. So let's just go over it because I'm going to try to put a little bit of just a little bit of a hezber, a little bit of understanding into this machlokas of Rashi and the Rosh. Again, so Rashi says, let's first take the Rosh, because the Rosh is the way that Rov Poskim hold the Gro, and the Eliyah Rabbah, most of the Korban Nesanel is very, 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 okay. The Rosh says that if the Ben Krach travels to the ear, and he plans to be in the ear at the Alos HaShachar of Yudaled, he loses his status as a Ben Krach, becomes a Ben Ear. Okay, that we understand. Right? Notwithstanding the Shagasari's question, which we'll try to explain a little bit later, but we understand that the determining factor here is the Alos HaShachar of Yud Daled. You're in the city. Yud Daled is the moment at which all the B'nai Ha'ir, where you are presently, are required to read the Megillah. You're there, and you're Yoshvei process, right? Okay. And then Rashi says, by the same token, if the Ben Ear travels to the Krach, and he's in the Krach on the Alos HaShachar, the morning for the Alos HaShachar of Tesvav, then he's divested of his status of a Ben Ear, and he reads the Megillah on Tesvav. Okay, this is again, I can't do justice to this because then it's a question: is he required to remain there? What exactly are the ramifications of this? But nevertheless, that's what Rashi says. Rashi says that the determining factor for the Ben Krach Sholach Leir is is the Alos HaShachar of Yud Dalet, and the determining factor of the Ben Ir Sholach Lakrach is the Alos HaShachar of Tesvav. The Rosh says, however, that he agrees with us, certainly the Ben Krach Sheholach Le'ir is determined by if you are in the ear on the morning of Yud Dalet when everyone becomes obligated to read the Megillah. Obviously you join them, right? Okay, fine. Because this is the Gzeres HaKosav of Ayoshim Bari HaPros, is fine. But the Rosh says, but that's if you're medayek in Rovas, in the Lashon of the Gemara, you see that Rava is not the way that Rashi interpreted. That Rava held that even the Ben Ir that goes to the Krach, his status as a Ben Krach isn't determined by his being in the city on the morning of Tesvav, but even if he's in the walled city on the morning of Yud Dalet, okay, even if he's in the city, he still is divested of his status of a Ben Ir, and he becomes a Ben Krach. And on that Rashi would ask, which is the Taz here in Tofresh Peiches, the Taz says, what do you mean? What did Rashi mean by that? There's no Megillah. He's now at the Alos HaShachar of Tesvav, he's in the Krach. There is no, how does the Alos HaShachar of Yud Dalet divest him of his status of a Ben Ir and invest him with the status of a Ben Krach? There's no Megillah in where he is now in the Krach. There's no Megillah today until tomorrow, right? Now that's the question, and that's the Taz in Tofresh Peiches is probably and it, to me it's a pella that Reb Shri Pesach Frank didn't bring the Taz, because the Taz is really the most is really offers really the clearest analysis of this whole that this is the question on Rashi, how in what there has to be something to be chal, and the Ben Ir goes to the Krach, and he is there in the Krach on the morning of Yud Dalet, the Alos HaShachar, he is immediately divested of his status of Ben Ir and invested with the status of Ben Krach, right? What it's not. There's no Megillah today. There's no Megillah today. There's not going to be Megillah for 24 hours from now. So what is a how? What divests him and what invests him? Okay, fine. Okay. You remember that in the Psiches to the Megillah, remember that there were 12 Psiches. And again, why it was that the Megilas Esther required the Psiches, that's a separate issue. And they're very, very, very much bekitzer. The reason that the Chazal introduced the Megilas Esther with the Psiches is because since the Megillah was a Nes b'derech HaTeva, and there was opposition to accepting it as Kisvei Kodesh, and there was there was opposition even to the adoption of Purim as a Yom Tov. So therefore, the Psiches were introduced by the various Tanoim, and mostly Amoraim, to establish that Purim was indeed a very, very significant nes, and it warranted the Kriyas HaMegillah, and it warranted the status of a Yom Tov. Okay, that's the. But you remember that this is the Tachas HaNatzutz. This is Reb Shmuel Bar Nachmeni in the name of Rabbi Yonason, who was his rabbi. This is Tachas HaNatzutz Yala Berosh, v'Tachas Asir Pod Yala Hadas. That Tachas HaNatzutz, the Natzutz is like a little bramble, is Yala Berosh. A tree will grow. Tachas Asir Pod, a little bush, Yala Hadas. There'll be the fragrance of the Hadas. V'hoysel Hashem l'Shem la'oysolam lo yikares. V'hoyol Hashem l'Shem la'oysolam lo yikares. This is the Haftarah that we read on the Tana Sibba. V'hoyol Hashem l'Shem, he says, is the Mikra Megillah. La'oysolam lo yikares is Yemei HaPurim. Okay, fine. The Mashal explains why is V'hoyol Hashem l'Shem Dafke Mikra Megillah, because since the Shem Havaya doesn't appear in the Megillah, so V'hoya Lashem L'Shem, the brachas on the Megillah and the remozim that the Arizal pointed out, which actually signify the Shem Havaya, that is in lieu of the mention of the Shem Havaya. V'hoya Lashem L'Shem is Mikra Megillah, La'oisolam Lo Yikares is the Yemei Purim. Fine. The Girs and the and Yaakov is Faket, is the opposite. V'hoya Lashem L'Shem Yemei Purim, and La'oisolam Lo Yikares, that's the Mikra Megillah. Okay. So very much bekitzer. Much has been said, much has been written as to exactly why the Ein Yaakov, the one who authored the Ein Yaakov, who edited the Ein Yaakov, changed. Evidently, he found that he didn't introduce the Girsa, no, he didn't innovate the Girsa. He found it, but why he adopted this Girsa over our accepted text in the Gemara? Okay, that the Mikra Megillah is first, and then you make Purim. So I always like to explain it. You remember that we had that Dvarim Sheben Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, that Beis Shammai says Mevarach al Hayom v'achar kach Mevarach al Hayayin, and Beis Hillel says Mevarach al Hayayin v'achar kach Mevarach al Hayom. And one of the reasons is, there are several, the Gemara says here is Tate, there is Tate, but one of the reasons is because Beis Shammai says that Hayom is Gorim le Kiddush She'omer, or Yayin She'yovo, without the Yom. Okay, so I always used to explain it that Beis Shammai meant that even the Megillah Shalayla, if you take it in Hilchas Chanukah, so the Ramah states that for Ma'ariv, the first night of Chanukah, you say Al Anisim, although we didn't bench Chanukah left yet. Okay? The same thing Purim, although the Ramah doesn't say it in Hilchas Purim, but it's obvious that you say Al Anisim, even though you've not yet laid the Megillah. Okay, fine. Why is that? Because the Yom Tov, whatever the significance of the Yemei Chanukah or the Yemei Purim, the day is Chal before the specific mitzvah. But from the time of the Shkias Sacham or the Sof Shkias Sacham, the Tzeitzach HaChavim, it's the Yom Tov of Purim, the days of Chanukah, and the Mikra Megillah is later. Certainly, is if we'll have time, we'll see later on that it may well be that the Mikra Megillah at night isn't really the same takona as the Mikra Megillah in the daytime. But Al Koponim, the Al Anisim pertains to the Yom, and therefore Al Anisim is said although you haven't yet seen Chanukah left, you haven't benched, you haven't read the Megillah, right? So Memela that the Beis Shammai says Mevarach al Hayom v'achar kach Mevarach al Hayayin. The Kedusha Shabbos, the Kedusha Yom Tov, the restrictions of Shabbos are here from the time of the Shkias Sachama, the Sof Ben Hashmoshes, right? Whereas Kiddush will be later. It could be later. There may be no Kiddush. A person may be fasting Tanis Chalom. Right? So therefore, Beis Shammai says that it's in order Mevarach al Hayom v'achar kach Mevarach al Hayayin. So Memela, according to the Ein Yaakov, the Ein Yaakov preferred the alternate girsa because it said V'hoyol Hashem l'Shem is Yemei Purim, and then Mikra Megillah because there are two factors. Number one, Midivrei Hanaviyim, they may not even be Mikra Megillah at night. And number two, even if there is Mikra Megillah at night, and we're going to try, if we have time, we'll show later that Rashi's Shita is certainly that the Mikra Megillah at night is certainly the din of the Mishnahs, the din of Mordechai and Esther. But nevertheless, that will be sometime later in the evening. But the Mikra Megillah is preceded by the inception, right, of the day. So Memele said, V'hoyal Hashem l'Shem, it's appropriate to be makdim the Yom Yemei Purim, right? And then only that's what the Ein Yaakov holds. Right? And here that you remember that the Gemara says that Chizkiah Kora b'Tveria b'Yudaled and Tesvov Misafkele. He was not certain whether or not Tveria enjoyed the status of an Ir Mukvas Choma. Why would it enjoy the status of an Ir Mukvas Choma? Because since it was secured by the Yam, And the way that we explain the Ramban, that the Ramban says that the mile of the Mukafim was that they were secure, that their walls gave them a measure of security and safety, which the Prozim didn't have. So Memela Cheskia said that it may very well be that the Yam of Tveria is the equivalent of a wall, and therefore you read it, and maybe yes and maybe no. Therefore he was, and the Gemara says in Daf Hey that Cheskia was uncertain, but the Rabbeinu HaKodesh was certain that Tveria was considered a Mukvas Choma. Okay, fine. So the Rambam says, and the Mechaber quotes the Rambam, that an ear which is a Sofek Mukvas Choma, most Yeshua ben Nun, reads the Megillah on Yudalad and Tesvav, but will only make the bracha on Yudalad, because Yudalad is Rov HaOlam. Right? It's a Sofek. So here the Taz brings the Mashal. And the Mashal says, hold on a moment, why is it different than Yom Tov Sheni Shel Goliath? You make 2 days of Yom Tovim, you make Kiddush, you daven all of the bracha. So since Chizkiah understood that there's a Sofek and you had to read the Megillah on Yudalet and Tesvav, make brachas on both days. Understand? Because you're doing, even though you're doing it Mesofek, but you're doing what the Chachamim, just like Sofek Kara Kriya Shema, Sofek Lo Kara Kriya Shema. Right? You read Kriya Shema again with the brachas. Why? Not because the brachas are a chelik of Kriya Shema. That has nothing to do with it. But the reason is because since the Chachamim determined, and the Chachamim said that Sofek here requires you to read again, then you're following the mandate of the Chachamim, and you make a bracha. So that's what the Taz says. The Taz, the Taz says it. And that's what the Taz says. And the Taz says, therefore, if the Chachamim mandated and required that you read the Megillah on Yudalet and Tesvav, then why shouldn't you make a bracha on both days? Right? Why should it be different than Yom Tov Sheni Shel Goliath? So he brings the answer of the Mashal and the Levush, and then the Taz is doicha both reasons, and the Taz gives an entirely different. Right. They spoke about, and the Mashal says, well, it's different because Yom Tov Sheni there's a Kedushas Hayom Derabanan, and therefore, and so the Taz says in the end, he says that it's very different. He says that in Yom Tov Sheni Shel Goliath, which was originally observed Machma Sofek, if today is Yom Tov, then tomorrow isn't Yom Tov. If today is Yom Tov, then yesterday wasn't Yom Tov. So it means if today is Yom Tov, tomorrow is nothing. If tomorrow is Yom Tov, today is nothing. So therefore you have to make the brachas, the Chachamim are starting to make the brachas, because otherwise you may be missing everything. You may have missed the day entirely. Whereas over here, b'de Eved, whenever you learn the Megillah, you would be Yotze. And he doesn't bring it, but the Bir Agra brings it. The Yerushalmi in the second parak says that Hakol Yotze b'Yud Daled, right? That b'de Eved, everyone is Yotze b'Yud Daled, even the Bnei Akrachim. So Memela over here, if you read today and you didn't read tomorrow, even if you're mechuyev mesofik to read today and tomorrow, but you read today and you didn't read, you were Yotze b'David. So Memela, there's no reason, it's not the equivalent of Yom Tov Sheni Shel Goliath. But then listen what the Taz says. The Taz argues that how can the Mashal say that Yom Tov Sheni is different? Because Yom Tov Sheni there's a Kedushas Hayom, there's a Kedushas Mikra Kodesh, and there's a din of Yom Tov, and therefore you have to make brachas. This is a Yom Tov deraisa. This is a Yom Tov derabbanan, albeit mesofik, but it's a Yom Tov derabbanan. It's certainly the second day of Rosh Hashanah. The Taz says, how could the Mashal say it? He says, Gam gabe Megillah yesh ba kedushas hayom. What did the Mashal mean? That Purim, he says Megillah, but he means Purim. Le'inyin kol hadinim hatluyim bePurim. This is kedushas hayom. The gam al okay. So therefore, he says. So the Taz says that if the difference between Yom Tov Sheni and a Sofek Mukvas Chayma would be kedushas hayom, Purim has the kedushas hayom not less than Yom Tov Sheni Shel Goliath, because it means that Cheskia that read today, he did Shalach Manas both days, he ate the Sudas Purim both days, it was Mekayim Matanas Yonim, the kedushas hayom, and remember that always again Mitzvah Hashem Purim, if you'll remind me, we'll talk about Unasana Toikev Kedushas Hayom, that the Unasana Toikev Kedushas Hayom, that the Mavah Shemesh shows how that goes on Purim as well. With Gematrias and Mamish with Sisra Torah, he shows that Unasana Toikev Kedushas Hayom goes on Purim as well. So he said, how could the Marshal say that the difference between Yontif Sheni, Shel Goliath, and Purim is because Yontif Sheni there's Kedushas Hayom and Purim there isn't, right? You can't. How can you say that, right? Purim is also Kedushas Hayom, and he leaves it at that. And then he goes on to his own teretz. We're saying that since Hakol Yotzim B'Yudalet anyway, it's not necessary to make a brocha. Not that you don't know, but it's not necessary. Because in any event, you would be Yotzim with Yudalet. Fine. So now, what does it mean when the Taz says that the Kedushas Hayom applies, Kedushas Hayom is present on Purim just as Yontif Sheni, just as any Yontif. And I tell you that the Mavah Shemesh is Machiav, that there was an Asana Toikev of Kedushas Hayom, it goes to Purim. It's an incentive, you see. I tell you, you come back Purim, you'll get something else also. Okay. So listen. Zok the Mechaber in Simen Tov Reish Tzadik Vov. Kol divrei avelos noagim b'Chanukah Purim. The avelos shiva, whatever the mitzvahs of Eivel, the isurim of Eivel are, apply to Chanukah and Purim. And then I'm skipping a little bit here. And the Ramos says, "V'yesh oimrim she'ein avelos noig b'Purim lo b'Yudalet v'lo b'Tesvav v'chein noagim." And there's some that argue, and they say that the avelos shiva is not noig. And that's the meaning among all the Ashkenazim. Okay? Okay. But the Mechaber held that it is. That's what the Mechaber says. The Mechaber associates himself, the Shach, in Simen Tov Aleph. It is part that in the end of Simen Tov Aleph in Hilchas Avelos, the Mechaber says Meis la Meis Kodem Purim or Poga bo Purim Eina Mafseka Avelos. He says that if a person is sitting Shiva and Purim, intervenes in the Shiva, so it's not Mafsek, not like Yontiv, it's like Shabbos. It's like Shabbos that he can do because Yontiv is Mafsek the Avelos. Right? Shabbos isn't mafsek the Avelos. You're not knowing the Avelos on Shabbos, but the Avelos resumes Motzei Shabbos, right? So the Mechaber says that Purim is like Shabbos, not Chanukah, Purim. Umikol mokom ein Avelos noig bo lo b'Yudalet v'lo b'Tesvav, right? Because as you may have Purim oila lo yavrim etoch haYehudim mishte v'simcha that whether you're in a krach or whether you're in an ear. But it doesn't matter. The 2 days of Yom Tovim. This is your Megillah day. This is your Megillah day. But they're both right. Ela dvarim shebetzina noeg, v'chayev l'shlach monos, and the ovel is chayev to send monos, and he can receive monos, right? V'afal pi sheina mesabel b'em ola lo meminyan ashiva kamo Shabbos. Okay. So remember that the Shach says that there's no way to be miyashiv this, and he brings from the Achronim that tried to be miyashiv this apparent stira in the Mechaber, that in Arachayim he says Avelis is noig Purim, and in Yoredeya he says that Avelis is not noig Purim, and Purim is like Shabbos linyan Avelis. And the Shach says all of the truth. He says the Shach says, he ends it by saying better a gesunte kasha than a shvacha teretz. Okay, and probably what it is, I've even seen it said that that from Orach Chaim until the end of Yoredeya he changed his mind. There we have other instances. Le'inyan Rabbeinu Tam Shkia. It's obvious that the Mechaber changed his mind. So he changed his mind. He had a reversal. Okay, fine. You remember that Tosfos and Daf Gimel, in Tosfos and Daf Gimel discusses whether or not you make Shechianu in the Megillah in the daytime, because since you made Shechianu at night, why should you say Shechianu 2 times in one mitzvah? So Rabbeinu Tam says, no, the Megillah Shel Yom is the Iker, so therefore, although you made Shechianu at night, you make Shechianu again in the daytime. And the Rambam says, no, you don't. You only make Shechianu once. So the Pnei Yeshua says, in that case, if the Megillah Shel Yom is everyone will agree is the Iker, which I don't think that we're going to have time this evening to really to explore that in any detail. But nevertheless, so the Pnei Yeshua says, and if so, why say Shechianu at night at all? Say Shechianu only in the daytime, right? If that's everyone, even Rabbeinu Tam who says that Shechianu is repeated, but everyone is in agreement that the Iker Kriyas HaMegillah is at night, is in the daytime. So why should Shechianu be recited in the day? If only once, to recite it in the daytime. Okay. So listen what the Pnei Yeshua says. He says that you have to make Shechianu in the daytime. Rabbeinu Tam holds. There's no question of that, right? Lefi shu ikar chiyuv l'chol adam. The Hakol Chayovim b'mikra Megillah, and that's why we goes on Shabbos the Gezer derabba. But Mashen ken b'layla ena elo lemitzvah balmo. The Megillah shalayla, certainly according to Rabbeinu Tam, is mitzvah. It's not the takon of Morchana. Rashi disagrees with this. V'afilu hoche tiknu shivarach kamo b'chol mitzvah derabanan. So if so, why shouldn't you say Shechianu in the daytime and not at night? Because at the Megillah Shalayla, even if it's not the Divrei Kabbalah, it's at least the Rabbanan, and okay. Eladil is Inyan Zman Hoyor Nira Li. The Pnei Yeshua says that Le'inyan Shechianu at night Hoyor Nira Li, that even without all of this, even without the Megillah Shalayla being at least a mitzvah Rabbanan, he said you don't need that. Why? You don't read the Megillah when you say Shechianu at night. You don't say Shechianu because of the Megillah per se. Right? Ela mishum chovas hayom keven da'aso chachamim k'moregel mamish d'chsiv mishta v'simcha v'divrei Kabbalah k'divrei Torah. You're saying the Shechianu is on the Yom Tov of Purim, which is the gears of the Ein Yaakov. V'hoyol Hashem l'shem. Right? L'shem. And what does l'shem mean? Kol bracha she'ein b'shem o malchus is ein a bracha. Right? So v'hoyol Hashem l'shem, in that gears of the Ein Yaakov, and the v'hoyol Hashem l'shem is merumas, the haskaras Hashem in the bracha of Shechianu, the Yemei Purim. Right? V'hoyol Hashem l'shem. Right? Ad, sagt der Pnei Yeshua. The Lashitas Kama Poskim, he doesn't go into the, which he means the Machaber, right? Ein Avelos v'aninos noig bo kemo shar regel, that there's not even Avelos. There's no Aninos on Purim. The oval can eat meat and drink wine, right? There's no Avelos on Purim. Even if you hold that Avelos Yom Rishon is deraisa, there's no Avelos on Purim. In Kem Shaper yesh levorach zman kemo zman de regel. At night, the Shechianu is machmas the Yontiv of Purim, and the Yontiv of Purim is a Yontiv like all Yom Tovim. It's even when we saw that the Mechaber says when this is how the Ramah is masking to this, that even Avelis isn't knowing on Purim. So for to be Oker the Avelis. Because remember, there's a Tosus and Daf Hey, and Tosus and Daf Hey, Rashi disagrees with this. It says that Hey Shiv Rashi asks that who gave Mordechai and Esther, the Yemei Mordechai and Esther, how could they be Dorcha Avelis? And the Rashi learns a different pshat altogether. Rashi holds Avelis is Noigan Purim. But all Rishonim disagree with this. I mean, that certainly Rabbeinu Tam, the Rambam, the Mechaber, we see. So now, go back to what I said before here in Tofresh Peiches. We said that here in Tofresh Peiches, that the Taz answered, that the Taz says that when the Marshal said that the reason that on Yom Tov Sheni you make Yom Nafsum, that the reason that the Marshal said that on Yom Tov Sheni you make the brachas and on Purim not, is because is because Yom Tov Sheni, there's Kedusha Sayom. Purim, there's the Taz Avada, there's Kedusha. The Taz is Bekitzer Nimrod. But what do you mean? What do you mean? There's no Kedusha Sayom? The Mechaber himself and the Taz is maskim, the Ramah is maskim that there's no Avelos on Purim. How can what is mafkia the Avelos? Only Kedusha Sayom, right? So Memela the Taz is doicha that teretz of the Mashal. That Purim is a Kedusha Sayom because okay. So now listen. So now let's go back to where we were before, and then we're coming in for the landing. Okay? We said before that the Rosh says that if the Ben-Ir goes to the Krach, right, then his din, because of Pruz Ben Yomo and Mukaf Ben Yomo, if he's there even for one day, if he would be there for the Alos HaShachar, he's divested of his din of Ir, and he becomes a Ben Krach. Why? Which day? Zok the Rosh, Yud Dalet. Okay? Rashi asks, this is an implied question in Rashi, which the Gra and the Taz explain, that Rashi says, what do you mean? The Ben-Ir goes to the Krach, right? And he is divested of his status of Ben-Ir, and he's invested with the status of Ben-Krach. So how can this occur on the morning of Yud Daled when he's in the Krach and as of yet, there's no Mikra Megillah until tomorrow? Well, how can you say that Yud Daled, the morning of Yud Daled, causes him to lose his status of Ben-Ir and become a Ben Krach, right? There's no Mikra Megillah till tomorrow. L'chara Rashi is right, that he can't become a Ben Krach until to being there in the morning of Tesvav. Because Tesvav, there's going to be Mikra Megillah. If he's there the morning of Tesvav, he loses the status of Ben-Ir, and now he is invested with the status of Ben Krach, right? But not the morning of Yud Daled. However, Hafla fellow, listen to this. The Mechaber has two shitas. He brings two shitas. In Orach Chaim, he says that Avelos is noyeg on Purim, right? Okay? In Yoredei and Siman Tov Aleph, he says Avelos is not noyeg on Purim. Okay? The Ramah brings here in Hilchos Megillah also that Yeshom and that Avelos isn't noyeg. So listen. You know that Arena Niflois Metarosa. Listen. Who is the Rishon, the Rosh of the Rishonim that holds that Avelos is noyeg on Purim? Rashi in Toisus and Daf Hey, and the Ber Hagoyla, when the Ber Hagoyla brings here that Avelos is noyeg on Purim, he cites Rashi. Rashi is the one that holds that Avelos is noyeg on Purim, and there's a tshuva in the Pardes, the Sefer HaPardes, the tshuva is Rashi that Avelos is noyeg on Purim, right? Okay, so Memela Rashi says that in the Purim there's no inherent Kedushas Hayom. There's no Kedushas Hayom. He would disagree with this Taz. Therefore, there's no Avelos. There's nothing to be doicha. There's no Kedushas Hayom to be doicha the Avelos. Therefore, Rashi says that if the Ben-Ir is in the Krach only on Yud Daled, what is Yud Daled? Nothing. It's nothing. There's no Megillah today because he's in the Krach. There's no Kedushas Hayom because even Avelos is noig. So Memela Zok Rashi, he cannot attain the status of Ben Krach until tomorrow morning, where at least there's Mikra Megillah. And then he'll become Ois Ben Ir, and he'll be a Ben Krach because of Mikra Megillah. The Rashi Leshitasa, because Rashi holds that Avelos is noig on Purim. So Yud Daled for him is nothing. He's in the Krach on Yud Daled. What is Yud Daled in the Krach? It's nothing. Right? It's nothing. Right? What do you mean it's nothing? Avelos is noig, so it's nothing. Right? Okay? However, the Rosh is Lishitose. The Rosh, which the Ber Hagoyla says and the Ramah says that this is the Rosh. Right? And it's a Tshuvas HaRosh as well. That the Rosh is, because the Rosh holds that Avelos is not noig on Purim. Like the Taz says, like the Pnei Yeshua says, that therefore you have to say Shachayonu at night because Purim is doiche the Avelos, says any regel, right? Therefore, Zok the Rosh, that if the Ben, and the Mechaber says in Tov Aleph, in Yoredeya, that both days are equal in that there's no Avelis. It doesn't matter if you live here, you live there, but Yudalit and Tesvav, there's no Avelis. So Memela, the Rosh says that if you're a Ben Ir, right, you're a Ben Ir, and you go to the Krach, and you're in the Krach in the morning of Yudalit, which Rashi says is nothing, there's nothing there to allow you to lose your status of Ben Ir, because there's no Megillah, there's Avelis, it's a regular day, a Mosachol. The Rosh says no. That day, if you're a Ben Ir, you went to the Krach, you're in the Krach on Yudalit, right? The Yom Tov for you begins also whether you're in the Ir, whether you're in the Krach, when does the Yom Tov begin? When does the Yom Tov to be Doicha Avelis begin? On Yudalit, even for the Bnei Krachim. Right? So Memela Dr. Rosh, since the morning of Yudalit, the Ben Ir was in the Krach, right? Yudalit, when the Yom Tov of Purim began, he was in the Krach, right? Okay? He was in the Krach. Since he was in the Krach when the Yom Tov began, therefore he can be considered as the Ben, because that's what you alluded to at the very beginning. Because it's only the status of the Rosh says the status of the Ben Ir and the Ben Krach isn't measured merely by Mikra Megillah. It's measured by the Yom Tov of Purim. If you were in the Krach when the Yom Tov of Purim began, then you're a Ben Krach. The Mikra Megillah is incidentally one of the mitzvahs of Purim. Right? So Memela Rashi says that the Ben Krach the Ben Ir doesn't lose his status of Ben Ir unless he's in the Krach on Tesvav. Because Rashi holds that there's Avelis on Purim. And Yudalit to him is nothing. Right? In the Krach it's nothing. Wait till Tesvav when there's Mikra Megillah, and then he becomes a Ben Krach, right? But the Rosh says, no, the Rosh says there's no Avelis Purim. Like the Pnei Yeshua says, that the fact that there's no Avelis, the Kedushas Hayom is Gorim de Shechayonu. Right? So therefore the Rosh says, even though you're the Ben Ir and you're in the Ben Krach, the morning of Yudalit, when does your Yom Tov begin? On Yudalit. Where were you when the Yom Tov began? In the Krach. So it doesn't matter whether it's Shalach Monas, whether it's Avelis, whether it's Mikra Megillah. Your Yom Tov began when? On Yudalit. Where were you on Yudalit? In the Krach. Therefore the Geras HaKosuv says that although there's no Mikra Megillah till tomorrow, it doesn't matter. Your Yom Tov began in the Krach. Therefore you're a Ben Krach. Okay.
If it was totally the Kedushas Hayom,
yeah.
So why doesn't it go by the night?
Oh, okay. So I'm going to see if I can squeeze it in 3 minutes. I don't think I'll be able to, though. Let me go back to who remembers what you were supposed to remind me of? Turei Even. Okay, the Turei Even. Okay. So the Turei Even, Akiva, why didn't you remind me? Nachman, what's the matter? Hope you're not sleeping on the couch. No? The Turei Even asked that Rava dash and al kein hayudim aprozim hayoshim barei aprozos, right? Hayoshim barei aprozos. And he says that we learn from those extra added words that even proves Ben Yoma, Mukaf Ben Yoma, right? And the Shagasarya asks, hold on, why should it be different than your Nidachas? Or that a Yoshev is only he's only a resident. The minimum residence requirement is 30 days. So why don't I say Adrab says Ayoshim Ba'aprozis to tell me that you have to live in the city for 30 days, right? Until you can be considered part of the city le'inyan the Iranidachas or le'inyan Neder, right? Okay, that's when and you left it. None of the other Achronim ask it, not the Pnei Yeshua, no one asks it. So l'chayra, according to the way that we're explaining this, it would be a way to a little bit out of to extricate ourselves from the question of because the Purim enochanami iranidachas is tolui in being a resident of the city. Before you're punished like the city to lose all your mominus, which is an Indian of Mammon. It's Issa, but it's Mammon as well, right? And there's also Agzeres HaKosev that if you're part of the Tzibur, your Misa is a less severe Misa. It's Sayef and not Skila. But the Torah said you have to be a Yoshev. No, you're not a Yoshev if you're not there for 30 days, right? In the Nedarim Avada, and certainly in the Nedarim we could add to the that Nedarim, and the Nedarim is Hol Chanach Alishon B'nei Odom. what a person is considered a Yoshev when after 30 days, right? But Le'inyan, the din of Mikra Megillah, the din of Purim, this is totally in the Kedushas Hayom. In the Kedushas Hayom, there's no residency requirement. If a person crosses the date line, again, not to go into the whole mevocha, but the tamtus of what the Chazon Ish says, you cross the date line, and here on one side of the date line it's not Shabbos, and you cross the date line at Shabbos, it's Shabbos for you. Understand? It's for you, it's Shabbos. The Kedushas Hayom is tolui not in residency. The Kedushas Hayom is tolui in where you are at the moment, right? So Memela, the Rava understood that when it says Al Kena Yudim Apraz Ma Yoshim Ba'Prazis, it can't. The intention of Mordechai it couldn't have been to establish residency in terms of 30 days, because this Purim is totally in the Kedushas Hayom. It's a Yom Tov, it's a Shabbos. What is it shaykh to say? Does it say Shabbos Sil Hashem B'chol Mosh V'seichem? Right? What does it matter? There's no residency requirement. You're here, right? You cross the date line, and where it is presently, it's Shabbos for you. Understand? Because it's totally in the Kedushas Hayom. Iran Idachas is totally in residency. Nedarim is totally in residency, right? In Rishon B'nai Adam. But Purim is totally in. Megillah is only one facet of that. The Iker is that the Pruz Ben Yomo is a Pruz, the Mukaf Ben Yomo is a Mukaf. It's the Iker is totally in the Kedushas Hayom, right? In that there's no Avedas, that there's Kedushas Hayom. No, that Kedushas Hayom. There's no residency requirement. There's no residency on the Kedushas Hayom. The Kedushas Hayom is what does the Gemara say? Remember what the Rosh says in that is that a person is Mekadosh and Isha with a date, and even if you can buy a kur of dates for a pruta, but she's mekudeshes because maybe shava pruta b'moda. Maybe this one date, if you would take it to moda, it would have value there. So although here it has not, so the Rosh says, remember what the Rosh says? The Rosh says that that's the Rabbonim. Because Kedusha ain't lehegdish ala makam v'shatay. Right? Ain't lehegdish ala. So Memela, Kedusha is totally in where you are at the moment. So since the Rav understood that the Yoshvi Bar Aprazos couldn't be a Gezeras HaKosov to establish residency requirement, because we're talking here with Kedushas Hayom. The Kedushas Hayom is determined by the place that you live. What you asked, I was going to, but it's a little bit too late. So you have two options. Either we'll talk about it Sunday, or else you have a better option. Come by Purim, and it's a very, very long discussion. It's a very long discussion, and I have a very, very, very a mahalach that I think that you would accept. I believe so. Anyway, just to tell you one thing that I said before that the Ramban says, you know, that the Ika Gezeras Haman was against those living in Eretz Yisrael, right? Because he said Rov Yisrael after the time the Rishon Koresh were living there. And the Ramban, you look at the entire Ramban, you see that this is very, very obvious. The Haman's war was really a war against Eretz Yisrael, because the majority of Yidden, at least the very, very significant, what was his milchama was ad chatzi hamalchus v'lo yigdover achotzis lemalchus, because Achashverosh understood and Haman understood that with the restoration of the Beis Hamikdash they're finished, and because David Amel said v'yered miyom ad yom, that this could be referring either to the Melech HaMashiach, or if they had been Zoicha, it could have been referring to Ezra, that's the Melech, either the Melech HaMashiach or Ezra, Vayered Meyom Yom, he'll rule from one seat to the other seat, right? Uminahar adaf seoretz, right? Lefonov yichru utziyim v'ovav for yalachechu, right? That he's going to rule all over, right? Okay? Malchet Tashish v'iyam mincha yoshivu, right? Shvo eshka yakrivu, and it says here that the Medrash says that it means that the mincha that Yaakov Avinu sent to Esav in Vayishlach, that all of that is going to come back. The Medrash says all of that is going to come back to the Melech HaMashiach, but it's going to come back. And here the Perish on the Tilim explains, he brings from the Taitaiches this way in the Targum, that it means that La'osid Lovo, there's going to be a rate of interest, right, attached to all of the minim that Yaakov, and which the Torah tells us specifically how many cows, how many donkeys, how many camels, right? Why is the Torah so specific? Because we have to know to compute what the interest is going to be la'osid lavo, that the Umas ha'olam are going to have to return to the Melech HaMashiach. Memele, Achashverosh and Haman, their obsession was ad chatzi ha'malchus v'lo davar ha'chotzitz l'malchus, because the Beis HaMikdash was chotzitz l'malchus, right? Achashverosh would be finished. The Umas Hola because Vayed Meyom Ad Yom. So Memela Achashverosh and Haman, the Gezerah was war against Eretz Yisrael to prevent the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash, which was Chotzes Lamalchus, and to prevent the restoration of the Avodah because of Ba'amo Eida Kiresheno is Kecholi the Bris Ben Abesorim. What guarantees the Yishuv Eretz Yisrael? B'moed HaKirshana, Kecholi, the Karbonos. So Memela Haman, there's very good at the Ramban that the Iker Milchama of Haman was against Eretz Yisrael, to prevent the Binyan Beis HaMikdash and the Vahashev Kohanim La'avoidosam Levim L'Shil Nidram. Okay? Rabbi Chananya ben Akasha Omer, Rotza HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Zakas Yisrael, Leficha Chibur Lam Torah Mitzvah Shenemar Adonai Chafetz L'man Tzidkoi, Yagdol Torah V'Yadim.
Das Kadash mir aber ich war hier mit was war von Ganel gerade ich خايخولي من خان خير قبل إسرائيل وقال ما كريم
من يهشمرا برك لما ما يسمرا ليخي